Hello, welcome to From the North. Today we're looking at football club ownership, where things have gone spectacularly wrong and what should be happening to stop more clubs from falling into the crisis we saw at Bury and Bolton this summer. In our studio tonight, well, why don't you just introduce yourselves? Andy, let's start with you.
Andy Holt, majority shareholder of Accrington, Stanley.
Christine Seddon, I'm Chair of Blackpool Supporters Trust and I'm also on the FSA National Council.
And Kieran.
I'm Kieran Maguire from the University of Liverpool, where I lecture on football finance.
So excited to have you three in. I know you're going to be great talkers on this. Andy, let's start with you. You have been so outspoken on football club ownership. Bury Football Club expelled from the Football League. They couldn't provide proof that Steve Dale had the funds to run the club, then couldn't get a takeover through in time. How did it come to this, do you think?
Well, it's a culmination of many years of bad management. There's no other way of putting it. You know, they've been reckless for many years, spending money that they didn't have, hocking up stadia, selling car park spaces and doing anything to generate cash to keep going. It's an absolute disaster for football. Everybody could see it coming and nothing ever gets done about it. It's a real shame.
Christine, what is it about football clubs, about living beyond their means? It just seems to happen at so many clubs, doesn't it?
It does, and it's the way the whole structure of football has become. And I think a lot of fans, me included, didn't really realise just how the finances work. You just turn up and go and watch your team. And of course, you do tend to put your owners under pressure. If your team's not doing well, you want them to spend, you want it to improve, and that's fair enough. But I think we all now need to really understand how football finances work, or in many cases don't work, if we are going to fix the problem, because there is a massive problem.
Kieran, just looking at Bury fans will say that yes, one takeover collapsed, but there was another potential one in the offing. But there was all this problem about the loan on the stadium, and would anyone have taken on Bury Football Club, do you think?
You'd have to be very brave or mad to take over Bury under those circumstances. It doesn't matter what you're buying in business, you need to know exactly what you're acquiring. So were they actually buying the stadium, but if somebody else was claiming to have a mortgage on the stadium, would they agree to settle that? What was happening in terms of the car parks? What about the wage levels? And what were the other assets, which were sometimes being transferred to other companies? So it was a pile of spaghetti that you were inheriting.
Christine, there are talks that people want to get Bury reinstated into the Football League, perhaps at League Two level. How do you think other football clubs like Blackpool would react to that?
Well, again, we've almost got two tiers here, because you've got the owners of football clubs, and you know, you can understand why they perhaps wouldn't be very happy about that, because it would benefit them for Bury not to be reinstated. But then you've also got, from a sense of fairness, when a club like Bury goes to the wall, it's not really the owner that's being punished, it's the community and it's the fans of that club who are blameless. So, you know, where do you go with this? This is why it's not a straightforward situation at all. But it is the owners, of course, who will have to vote on whether that happens or not.
So we all turn and glare at Andy now and find out.
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because, you know, I speak to owners who say Bury shouldn't have been in League One anyhow. So if they go into League Two, they weren't actually relegated because they went up on money that were provided by PFA and loans to players, and they didn't pay the bills, they didn't pay any of the staff. So it was kind of a false Bury that went up. The players kept playing, and they got up. And there's other owners that say, look, if somebody gambles the house and fails, why should we bother if he goes out of business? And that is the hard business side of it, you know. And you know, we need a discussion on what a football club is, because as Christine says, you've got the fan community side of it, and you've got the football business side of it, and they don't mix. They don't mix, and there's no proper rules to govern how they operate.
I mean, we at Blackpool, we've ended up being extremely fortunate simply because we had a minority shareholder who had a financial interest in the club. So he had recourse to law when things were going wrong at Blackpool. He could go to a judge and say, right, this is not right, this is my investment, and I want you to do something about it. And of course the judge did. Thankfully that benefited us as fans. But as fans, we had nowhere to go. So if that hadn't happened, that's why we as Blackpool fans, we ended up boycotting for so so long, because that was literally the only power that we actually had. And this is where the frustration of fans comes in, because it's like nobody's listening to us at all. Well, some people are, but you know, most aren't. And the way the football pyramid is set up, I feel particularly like we're getting to the Premier League now, but talking about them, but fans are almost like television extras. Are we really needed other than to turn up and provide atmosphere? I don't know. Where are we going with all
Kieran,
of this?
Bring you in here. How much are fans needed these days, in the days of TV deals and corporate hospitality? How much are football fans really needed across the board?
It depends where you are. If you look at the Premier League, some clubs are getting as little as 7 or 8% of their total income from match day. So, as fans are an afterthought, they're good for selling the Premier League to an outside audience. As you drop down the divisions, I think fans do become more important because the TV money is less. But surely, if you don't have fans, are football. Because without the fans, ultimately, if we're not being there physically, we're watching it on television or listening to the radio. So I think that the governing bodies and also the clubs themselves need to realise that if you start to take fans too much for granted, there will be a rebellion. There's lots of other things to do on a Saturday afternoon.
I mean, you've got fans boycotting games because of an EFL trophy that somebody's invented. You've got fans pasting signs up all over the place about the EFL, and they're trying to get a message to you. And I like it. I run a business, I make housewares and I supply them through a retailer to the public. But if I don't make something that the public wants to buy, no matter how much I sell to Tesco or Asda or whoever, the public won't buy them. So I've got to make my offer in my business match what the public want. And that's what's missing at EFL. I want to try to have this debate with them. It's, well, that's not to do with us. We deal with clubs. Clubs deal with fans. And I said, but when a club goes wrong in that instance, it all lands back with a billboard outside your office. You know, you're owning the problem, but you're not doing anything about it. So the truth is, the offer that the EFL puts out, it should be the English Football League, best league in Europe. You know, it could be a fantastic product. We're probably going to get off at Premier League clubs when top 6 clear off wherever they're going, doing what they're doing, and we've got a great product.
So can I just pin you down then, in terms of the vote when it comes to it, to the Football League owners? Do they want Bury to be reinstated in League 2? Can I ask you, would you vote for that?
There isn't going to be a vote. So this meeting on 26th, I'm not even bothering going, because I haven't not seen the agenda yet, but there's not going to be a vote. There might be a vote to decide whether there's going to be a vote.
Right.
So if somebody said to me, are you going to vote for Bury to be readmitted to League 2, I'd say, who owns it? Under what conditions? Are they going to run a proper budget? Have they sorted the stadium out? Or are we going to be back here in 6 months?
And they're not in a state to answer any of those questions yet, are they?
And that's the problem. Unless we've got all them answers, it's difficult to support or not. So it's going to be a waiting brief, I would imagine, where clubs are just going to say, you know, bring to us what you're suggesting will be admitted, and then we'll give you an answer.
And just finally on it, just briefly, you see the conversations that people have at these EFL meetings when the owners get together. How much hope should Bury fans have that they might be in the Football League?
Well, I don't think their hope is anything to do with Football League, to be honest. I think if they can solve all their problems at Bury, they deserve a pat on back and go in Premier League if they need to, because a lot of them problems have been virtually insurmountable for a long time now. You know, people have been looking to buy it.
I mean, I think in some ways that the fans, as long as the fans don't give up, fans are the club, and I know there's people worried that Bury's just going to die. It won't, as long as the fans stick with it.
Well, I was going to ask you about this. A lot of the Bury fans that I speak to have said they've just felt so helpless. Yeah. The power's taken out of their hands. Yeah. But hasn't what happened at Blackpool shown us that fans can affect change.
Fans absolutely can affect change. Now, as I say, in some ways I feel almost a little bit guilty talking about Bury now, because Blackpool have had such a fantastic outcome.
Yes.
And it doesn't look like Bury's going to get that kind of thing at the moment. However, it is still their club, and if they work hard enough, even if they do have to go right back down and start again, in some ways that's better, because they'll be rid of all the toxic mess that is associated with Bury at the moment, and start again, and it'll be theirs. So the heart is still there. If the heart's still beating, there is a future. You only have to look at AFC Wimbledon, for example. Look where they are now. It can happen. There are other clubs that have had absolute disasters, but have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, and they mustn't lose heart.
But moving away from Bury and just looking at clubs in Leagues 1 and 2 broadly, we've seen your graphs, Andy, that you've tweeted. I don't know how accurate and how perfect they are, but they do sort of illustrate the gap between the money that the Premier League clubs get and how much is passed down to Championship clubs and how much is passed down to Leagues 1 and 2. Kieran, can you fill us in a little bit on that, on the disparity between the leagues?
Well, in the Premier League, you're going to get around about a minimum of £100 million, possibly £200 million from TV. And that will drop to around about £7 million in the Championship. So you can see why the clubs in the Championship are living beyond their means. But if you look at what they're doing in terms of a business, it's absolutely crazy. In the last 5 years, the money coming into the Championship has increased by £260 million. The wage bill has gone up by 290. So for every penny that's going in, they're spending more. You then drop down into League 1 and it goes down from 7 million to about 1.25, about 1.4, and then you drop down into League 2. Now, going back to the Bury situation, if I was a club owner of a League 2 club in the bottom half of that division, I might feel sympathy towards Bury and their fans. I wouldn't be voting for them to come back, because you then drop out into the National League, there's no TV money. So you've got a tiny TV deal, and I wouldn't want my fans shouting at me during matches if we're at the wrong end of League 2, if there's two sides going down instead of one. So there's a lot of self-interest involved in this, as well as sort of general business interest.
But Andy, with that gap in the amount of money that's going into the top two divisions and the bottom two divisions, what happens? What's the future for clubs in those divisions there?
Well, the problem is the formulas for the distribution make the gap worse every year, and it's a mathematical certainty. It's not, it's formulas that were set down, and these formulas were put in place when there weren't a lot of money. So there's not much argument or discussion with them. If you were getting 12% of £100, you're getting £12. You're not bothered. But if it's 12% of 100 million, the cash gap between each league is so great that owners feel that they've got to close that gap if they want to get to the next league. Yeah. So you're covering ever increasing gaps. I mean, I'm sat there in League 1, and I want to stay in League 1 as a minimum. If we go down, it'll cost us £750,000. You're always tempted to say, well, let's spend another £500,000 if it saves, if that spending that money gets us relief from relegation.
But the problem is, if you go down,
well,
it costs even more.
Once you've spent it, if you're still going down, you have to spend it again. So you've lost that, and and it's a bit like feeding a bandit. It's crazy. Yeah. So you've kind of like, we've got to have discipline, and discipline won't come without regulation. And regulation's got to give discipline. Things I'd like to see, Kieran, is all right, if you want to gamble this year and you create losses, you settle it before next year. You can't have, you look what happened at Bolton, it's 180 million losses, but it went on for year and year and year and year, never got settled. Same with Sunderland, same with Bury. They weren't losing, I think they were 14 million losses or whatever, Kieran knows, but it weren't all done in 1 year. So EFL could have said, look, you've made your loss, now you've got to straighten it up if you want to start next competition. So
but isn't it the club owners themselves that have got to tell the EFL, well, we want this for long-term sustainability, and there's quite a few owners who are just saying, well, we're going to get promoted. We want the glory. And I can understand that, and there's a lot of very wealthy people who will never have money problems, and they feel, well, why should we have to worry about other clubs who are more community-based than our particular club? we just want to shoot for the moon. We want to get promoted. And it's how do you reconcile the fact that there are different factions within the game? I'm sure you've attended these meetings where everybody just spends hours falling out with each other.
Well, to be honest, I don't think there is. I don't think there is a big argument. You know, there's different sides to a debate, and obviously, if you've got a division, half of clubs are better than average financially, and half of clubs are worse than average. I'm not talking about profit and loss here. I'm just talking about available cash, however it gets in. So you're always going to have that side of the debate that thinks, well, I've spoke to owners and they've said it's my money, I'll spend it how I want.
But Christine, and I know that you've spoken as well about how concerned you are for the football pyramid. So given all this and all of these concerns, how worried are you?
Very worried, because I mean it's the basic principle, isn't it, that you know in your house it doesn't matter how nice it looks on top, if the foundations are rotten the whole thing's going to come down eventually, and there hasn't been enough attention paid to the lower levels of football or how it works. I mean, I'm fascinated listening to Andy as an owner, and I've learnt such a lot in the last few years as to how the whole thing works, and I also think really that football fans need to be better educated on how finance works, because you know we are responsible for putting these owners under pressure, and like Andy's just said, you know, it's a case of, oh well, I might as well just chuck some more money in and let's try and shoot for the moon, or let's do this, and it doesn't necessarily work. So if we are adding, as fans are adding to the problem because we have these expectations that are not really very realistic, the whole thing needs to be looked at. It is a very big problem.
So just to end this section then, can I just get a one-word answer from each of you? In the next couple of years, let's start with you, Andy. In the next couple of years, will we see another club like Bury get kicked out of the Football League or go bust? Do you think something like that might happen?
If the question were in trouble, I'd say yes.
Christine?
Yes, I think so.
Kieran?
Yes.
That's gloomy. Let's lighten it up. Let's lighten it up. Oh, goodness me. Look, let's have a bit of fun now and talk about what a football club owner should be. We like to think that this is what Andy is here as well, but we don't want to embarrass him too much. Let's go to you one by one. Should a football club owner, Kieran, have several £1 million in the bank? Should every football club owner have that?
No, provided you can run a budget and don't live beyond your means. It's actually having a smart owner rather than a rich owner. I think fans want sugar daddies. They don't want investors. They don't actually understand what investment is. I'd much rather have a smart owner any time of the week.
Christine, should every football club owner have zero business failings in the past? Or can you allow them that?
They shouldn't have zero business failings, because I think you learn from your failures, don't you? So I think most business people who are successful have got there having learnt from their past failures. But I absolutely agree that really we at Blackpool, for example, now we've got Simon Sadler. I don't want him to be just chucking money at it. I'd much rather there was sensible investment and that we build slowly but surely for the future. And that's really how football needs to be looked at, because we've seen what happens when the opposite is applied.
Andy, you're brilliant at interviews. Everybody likes to hear you speak. You're very opinionated. Should every club owner have that ability to communicate? Should every football club owner look and sound good on camera?
Well, I mean, I fell into it by accident, the communication bit. So when I joined Accrington Stanley, the things were being said. Nobody trusted me, and rightly so, because they don't know you from Adam. They've seen a load of owners come and go, so that's fair comment. It got on my nerves at the time, but I accepted it. You know, it's par for the course. But things were going around on social media and spreading these websites and web groups, and things were getting spread far and wide. And my opportunity to answer them were in a programme in 3 weeks, or if a newspaper had run it, or if you'd bother talking to us now and again. You know, you'd be into that.
You've got a little dig in there. You had to get that dig in before the end.
And it was my daughter that came up and said, "Have you seen this?" And I said, "Well, that's not right." She said, "Well, it's on Twitter." I said, "What's Twitter?" So, I didn't know it from Adam. But then I thought, well, rather than waiting for I might as well just answer it. And ever since I've been answering it and also asking for the feedback, and we run the club in a way that they're happy, I hope. And if they're not, then I'll go. You know, they can tell me that my time will be up. Everybody's time comes to an end eventually, and when it does, I'll go. But I'm doing it on behalf of town and fans. That's the only reason I got involved, because of the work community trust we do with 10,000 people in town. You know, disabled people, socially isolated people, people with drug dependency. They do a lot of work that nobody sees, and it would, you know, when these clubs go, you've got to understand that it's not just the club, it's the community side. It affects thousands and thousands of people that don't even come to a club. You know, kids going learning to kick the first ball. So the losses to a community are more than just the fans that turn up. It's a massive loss that goes on. So
Andy, you've said that your time at Accrington will come to an end. Everyone's time comes to an end. So is ours here today. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to all of you. Kieran, Christine, Andy, thanks so much for coming in. And that is it from the North for this podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again.